AEW Rampage has continued to see ratings decline since the show debuted on TNT over a year ago. But why are the ratings for Rampage so low? That's what we're going to discuss in today's video. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty to get into in the world of pro wrestling, specifically AEW. Now, I am traveling today, but I didn't want you guys to go without. So instead, we're going to talk a little bit more broadly. Instead of the latest news, we're going to talk a bit more about AEW Rampage. Now, I did a video previously talking about why the ratings were so low recently for AEW and the decline this year, why the products felt cold and what AEW can do to improve it. But what I thought I'd do today is focus specifically on Rampage. What's going on with Rampage? Why are the ratings for Rampage so low? And to be honest, it doesn't take a genius to figure it out, but I do think there are some specific reasons why, and there are some quick fixes and some more longer term fixes that Tony Khan can implement to honestly save this show. There have been discussions, Dave Meltzer reported on it, that if the ratings continue to be as low as they are for Rampage, it might be a situation where Warner Bros. Discovery say, guess what, we don't want the show anymore, and they cancel it. It's a real possibility. So why are the ratings, why are the numbers so low for AEW Rampage? And honestly, the biggest reason for me is not so much because the time slot and the taped nature of it, etc., and the talent featured on it. Obviously, that's all part of it, and we're going to focus on that. But for me, the biggest reason why AEW Rampage is struggling at the moment is because fans have been conditioned. You tell your fans the importance through the booking, through the presentation, through the hype, through the fans discussing it on social media. The fans have been told indirectly, not directly by AEW, but the fans have been told not to care about this show. The fans have been told via the presentation of this show for over about 18 months or so now, since it debuted around last summer. The fans have been told not to care. As a viewer, you've been told by watching Dynamite every single week that if you miss Rampage, it doesn't matter. We're going to tell you what happened anyway, and nothing really big happens on there, so that's it. That's it. It's over. It doesn't really matter. Because, well, as an audience, you get involved into patterns of viewing, right? You view your TV shows, and you find out if there are or are not consequences of not tuning into a show. And the first few weeks of AEW Rampage, of course you had to tune in. The debut show, Kenny Omega dropping the Impact World Championship to Christian Cage, it felt big. A couple weeks later, CM Punk, the first dance, it felt massive. You have to tune in. You don't know what's going to happen. It's only an hour show. The pacing's different to AEW Dynamite. It's on a different night. It's not 2 hours, it's 1 hour, and it's quicker, it's fast paced. The main event's in the opening match and not vice versa. You know, it was a different kind of show. But then the first few weeks that you didn't start watching AEW Rampage and you missed it, and then you tuned into Dynamite and you go, I didn't watch Rampage. Oh, did I miss anything? Or you go on social media the next day, you go, I forgot about watching Rampage. Oh, I bet I missed something big. And then you see that nothing happened. Nothing of substance happened. And you go, oh, I didn't miss anything. Well, it doesn't matter then if I don't tune in again. And that's really the message that's been told to the audience from AEW. It's Wednesday's the bread and butter. Wednesday's the flagship. AEW Dynamite on TBS and TNT on Fridays. It doesn't really matter. It's just a show that's... I mean, remember when it was even marketed? This is key too. It was even marketed as a third hour. Oh, this is a third hour of Dynamite. Sometimes, what a poor third hour. Sometimes there are AEW Rampage episodes that offer nothing really of substance. And yeah, there'll be good matches. And yeah, there'll be talented, title matches. Recently, there was Orange Cassidy versus QT Marshall in the main event, and it was a lumberjack match. Okay, but as a main event of a show, and actually, I know before you say, well, actually, Owen, that actually turned the ratings around a little bit for that show because it was the most viewed match on the show, which is a rarity for the main event. But still, if you're going to sell the show, you're going to sell a cable wrestling show in 2022 with a main event of Orange Cassidy versus QT Marshall, that would never, ever, ever be a main event of Dynamite. And that's the difference. Your main events of Rampage have to be the same level as your main events of Dynamite. There has to be no difference between that show. There has to be a show that's equal in star power, equal in pacing, and equal as in importance. If you miss Rampage, you're going to miss out. You'll miss a massive part of the story. You have to tune into Rampage. And at this point, it's not must-see. And over 18 months, you've been told and you've been conditioned by AEW programming, if you don't tune into Rampage, you don't miss anything. Now, there are other parts that factor into why the numbers are so low for AEW Rampage as well, and part of it is the time slot. Look, the time slot sucks. On Friday nights are wrestling nights, not, they weren't historically, previously Friday nights were kind of a nights of people are going out, people are going to be out doing stuff, they're not going to be sat at home watching television, but things have changed. Planning has changed, lifestyle's changed, and SmackDown was moved to Fridays back in 2004 or 5. I think it was 2005 it was moved to Fridays, and even at the time, WWE weren't particularly happy about it, but they were on UPN, and it felt like this would be a good move because they wanted to bump up the numbers on Fridays, and over time, about 20 years or so now, Friday nights become a good night for pro wrestling. The issue is the number one pro wrestling show in the world also happens to take place live on Fridays now. Friday Night SmackDown on Fox with WWE. So you would think, logically, well, actually, isn't that a good thing? Then you have from SmackDown live from 8 to 10, and that's a bit of a lead-in on Fox to Rampage on TNT. But it's not. The WWE and AEW audience is actually quite separate. There are people that like WWE and don't like AEW, and vice versa. People that only like AEW and don't like WWE. And for a lot of people, after 2 hours of watching SmackDown on a Friday from 8 to 10, they've got their pro wrestling fix. They've got the wrestling they want to watch that evening. They don't fancy watching another hour of a different company on a different channel, and they're done for the night. And they don't really care that much. So you're then looking at a situation whereby it's 10 to 11, so the drop-off is always huge. I mean, the drop-off's huge from 10 to 11 anyway. Look at Monday Night Raw. Monday Night Raw is a great example of this. Monday Night Raw is an institution. It's been on the air for nearly, 30 years in January. It's been on the USA Network for the majority of that, apart from the time it was on Spike, TNN, whatever you want to call about it. But it's been in that slot for 30 years. And even now, they still have a massive drop-off from 10 to 11. That hour for pro wrestling is death. They can't get people to tune in. They can't pay people to tune in from 10 p.m. to 11 p.m. So why would a huge viewing audience want to tune in to a tape show from 10 to 11 on TNT? They wouldn't. That's the problem. So the time slot sucks. And because of that, you're always going to have a ceiling. You're always going to have a ceiling whilst it's 10 to 11 because it's just not the prime time spot where pro wrestling flourishes, unfortunately. So to improve in the future, they have to get out of that time slot. Also as well, the issue is that it's a tape show. In 2022, when you have information at your fingertips, a tape show thriving, it's just not possible. It just isn't. We can find out what's going to happen in AEW Rampage whilst it's happening. Whilst it might not be on the television show, it might be not airing on TV until Friday from 10 p.m. to 11 p.m. But at the same time, we know what's going to happen. The moment Dynamite goes off the air and they start taping Rampage, because of social media, you can basically watch the show happen in real time. And even if you don't, you can find out the next day very easily, even if you're trying to avoid spoilers. Sometimes they're just unavoidable because you go on social media and the algorithm, it just throws up a picture of someone at the taping and it goes, hey, here you go. This is what happened at Rampage. And most of the time, as I mentioned, because of the first point where the fans are conditioned not to care because the shows aren't really built up that much, you go, oh, well, even if I was thinking about tuning in, I'm not going to tune in now actually because guess what? I've seen what happens. It's not all that exciting. I'll give it a miss. Now, AEW's tried to counterbalance that. Tony Khan, particularly in the last few months, has gone to the majority of live rampages, but it still doesn't make much of a difference because the damage is done. And frankly, even going from tape to live for 3 weeks and then tape for 2 months and then back to live for 6 weeks, it's so much inconsistency there that no one really knows what's going on. And now usually when it's a live rampage, it does a bit better because you don't have that taped element and people have to tune in to find out what's going to happen because they can't find the information elsewhere. They can't find the spoilers elsewhere. But being a tape show really does hurt Rampage too. So you've got all of these different factors. You've got just the general booking and presentation of Rampage. You're told not to care. You've then got the time slot, being in a difficult time slot. You've then got the fact that it's a tape show, sometimes a live show, but most of the time it's a tape show and you can find out all of the information. You've got all of that going on. It's always going to be a problem. And it continues to be a problem for AEW and AEW Rampage. And it's not even like back in the day, because you can say, well, and back in the day, SmackDown, that was a tape show, and people could find the spoilers and find the information, but people tuned in. As soon as SmackDown went up to being a live show, the ratings went up. Now, obviously, you could say, well, actually, no, back in the Attitude Era, etc. Well, TV was different then. But a live show does better than a tape show. That's just factual. That's purely factual. And, again, back in the day, you still had to kind of go out your way to find those spoilers. You had to go onto pro wrestling websites on the internet, on a computer. You didn't have the information in your hand on a phone, on a smartphone, or on a tablet or whatever. Now, sometimes you genuinely can't even avoid it. You try your best not to avoid it, but because of the coverage, because of so many different news outlets, you'll find out. You'll find out immediately, and that's the problem with a tape show. If it's live, everyone finds out at the same time, and they need to resolve that. And finally, as well, as I mentioned, and this kind of goes back to the first point, I suppose, of fans being told not really to care, the best talent isn't featured. You don't often see the top talent on that show. They try occasionally. They'll put Moxley on there. Jericho will be on there. Sometimes he's on commentary. Sometimes he's wrestling. When Punk was there, they'll put Punk on there. They'll put Bryan Danielson on there. But it's not enough. It's not enough of a show that you can just put one big name on and it will draw. You need multiple names. You need to have a main event of Jericho versus Moxley. You need to have world title matches that actually matter. You know, when they had Hangman Page defending the title against people, you know, in the Rampage main event, it helped a bit. Not a lot, but it helped a bit because, again, by this point, the damage is done. And that's the problem. I think any resolution we can look towards for this show, has the damage already been done because of all of these points, because you've told fans not to care, because the time slot sucks, because it's taped, because the best talent usually isn't featured? By the time you do put good talent on that show, it's not enough. It's not even a show at this point, I don't think. Like, for instance, if Dynamite goes down in the ratings, Tony Khan usually puts a title match, or he teases an announcement, or a big surprise, and it does spike the ratings, then the rating goes back up and they're happy. Rampage is beyond that point. At this point for me, it's not enough to go, we're going to put a big announcement on that show. Well, they don't care. We're going to put Bryan Danielson in the main event. They don't care. We're going to have Jon Moxley in the main event. We don't care. They had Shibata wrestle one of the only matches he's wrestled in like 6 years, or even longer than that, 8 years, and people still realistically didn't really care that much. Just over 400,000 live viewers. That's the number. It's around 400,000, bit over, sometimes even less, sometimes it's under 400, and that's not good. Because, again, by this point, the damage has been done. Now, how do you fix it? What fixes, what changes could we implement that could help AEW Rampage? Well, the quick fix immediately, it would be go live every week. Go live every week in that time slot, whether it means an extra day on the road, and I know financially that might be a problem for AEW logistically. One of the big selling points to a lot of the talent that's on the AEW roster is having one date per week. Once you open it to 2, 3, or possibly 4, people won't be happy, but ultimately the business has got to come first. So the quickest fix is have Rampage be live every Friday. That's one thing. And tape a load of other stuff during that time anyway. Tape Dark Elevation, do whatever, you know. But it's got to be live. It's got to be live, and that takes away the taped factor. That takes away the spoilers factor. And at least it gives fans a feeling of, well, it's live, anything can happen. You know, when it's taped, nothing can happen that's spontaneous. When it's live, you never know. Something big could happen. My next point would be, move it to a different night. Take it away from Friday nights. Friday nights is already dominated by WWE. You're not going to usurp WWE in that spot on Fox, or even if they move to FS1. You're not going to beat them. There's no point. And they're not going head-to-head. They're trying to stay away from them. But Friday night's WWE's night for pro wrestling. Don't even be involved. Get away from all of it. So for that, I would say move to Saturdays. Saturday night's not occupied. Now, a lot of the time you could say, well, what about if it's a pay-per-view night? What if WWE's doing a premium live event? What if AEW is going to do a pay-per-view event? Well, AEW's kind of moved their pay-per-view model to Sunday. They very rarely have shows on Saturdays now. It's only really Full Gear. And if it is the case, do like WWE did with Sunday Night Heat back in the day. Just make it lead into the pay-per-view. Move it a bit early. We're going to have a special live edition of Rampage, and that is going to be a 1-hour show, but it's a lead into the pay-per-view. And you could do a big number on TNT because of that. They used to do really good numbers on USA Network for Sunday Night Heats before going into a pay-per-view, so why not do that? So move it to a Saturday, and on the odd occasion where you are competing with a premium live event with WWE, you'll get killed. You'll get killed. But guess what? It's a secondary show anyway. It's a small price to pay. It doesn't matter. Maybe on that week you go taped, you know, but go live most of the time anyway. It doesn't matter. I would also say move it to a 2-hour show. Move it, if you can move it to Saturday, move it from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Prime time at the weekend. I know it's a weekend and people are busy and people will be out, but it's a 2-hour show. You can feature more talent on it, bigger name talent that can actually draw. It's live, and it becomes a mirror version of Dynamite. It becomes a mirror version of Dynamite, but at the same time, have it look and feel different. The problem is at the moment is you tune in to Rampage, there's no real difference between that and Dynamite in terms of presentation. We know that there's going to be major overhaul in terms of production for AEW next year. And one of the things would be Rampage. Have a different stage. Be on a different night. Different crew. I know they've got different music and commentators and stuff like that, but make it legitimately feel different. Even it's the way the hard camera is on the different side, just make it feel completely different. So again, move it to Saturdays, make it live, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m., have it shot different, have it presented differently, have production be different. And even if you can't do that, turn it into a Ring of Honor show. I know we now have an update on the Ring of Honor television deal, or the lack thereof. There isn't a TV deal. It's going to be airing on Honor Club. Frankly, I would have said to Warner Bros. Discovery, you know what? Let's just replace Rampage with Ring of Honor TV. I don't know if we're going to call it Ring of Honor Rampage, but let's just replace that. Clearly, it's not working, Rampage, so we need to divide up the rosters anyway. The roster's bloated and people aren't happy that they're not working enough. So why don't we just have the Ring of Honor people be on Saturdays or on Fridays, whatever that may be, and let's just move on with that. Let's have it be that. I think that's last gasp sort of attempts to fix things, and I don't think it needs that. I think the best way to fix Rampage is make it live, move it Saturdays, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. and make sure it's a stacked roster show, and it feels like Dynamite, but it's shot completely different. In terms of star power, make it must-see. Have title changes happen on that show. Have major angles happen on that show. And if they don't tune in, when they do watch on Dynamite on Wednesday on TBS, you show them, oh, guess what? You missed this. You missed this title change. Or, oh, why is this person holding this belt? Or why is this person suddenly a heel? Well, if you don't tune into Rampage, you don't find out. Have consequences of missing the show. At the moment, there's no consequence to missing Rampage. You're basically told it doesn't matter. Make it matter. Make it matter by having big stuff happen. My concern is, though, like I said earlier, at this point, is it too much too late? I think so. I think it's too little too late when it comes to AEW Rampage. I feel like it's a show that can't be saved. I feel like it's a show that, again, the audience has been told what to think of Rampage, and basically what they've been told to think is don't tune in because you don't miss anything. Now, how would you fix AEW Rampage? How would you save the show? How would you increase the ratings? Or is it beyond the point of no return at this point? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe bottom right-hand corner. If you like these kind of videos, be sure to subscribe and let me know if you enjoy these kind of videos. There will be news stories coming back tomorrow with the latest WWE and AEW news. I'm out of here. Have a good one, and I'll speak to you again very soon. Peace.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.